What's going on here again, friends? We'll clear that up and more in this video, and we'll also talk about what's possible for Ethereum in this cycle. Because believe me, some people are way too pessimistic about Ethereum here. But last night, we saw a bigger dump. Of course, once again on a Sunday night. Why is that? Because it's much easier for the market makers then. On Sunday night, we have the least liquidity in the market, the lowest volume, and of course, the market makers take advantage of that and dump the market accordingly. But honestly, it was overdue anyway because we had already seen the PPI data, and the PPI data was at 3.3%. And that's not really good for inflation, because PPI ultimately means producer price index, in other words, how expensive it is to produce goods. Here, we rose significantly higher than expected. This will very likely also affect the upcoming CPI data, and all of this suggests, once again, that the next interest rate cuts, which are scheduled for September 17th, are becoming a bit less likely. I mean, just a few days ago, we were still at 99%. Now the probability is only at 84%. It's still good, but the probability has dropped significantly in recent days because we simply have high PPI data here, and as a result, will very likely also have higher CPI data. As a result, we just have persistent inflation, even though people already thought that inflation was over. And that's exactly the problem right now, why the markets are dumping. But at this point, it has to be said that the market makers are simply taking advantage of this, using such information to dump the market. If you want to see these market updates first, join our Telegram group. It's also mentioned here again. We posted the market update here first, explaining why we're dumping right now. But we also share trades here, showing when and how we trade. We have copy trading, we have trading strategies, and so on. You definitely need to join here. Everything you need to know is in the description. It's 100% free. You just need to register once on Weex, deposit some money there, send your UID to the Telegram bot, and you're in. And I promise you, there is no Telegram group on the market that gives you as much value, and all of it for free. Then let's briefly talk about Ethereum. And 3 days ago, I described to you exactly what has now happened. Take a look at it. As I can well imagine, this might have been the local top here, or we might go a bit higher to around 4,900 or so, and then we'll first grab this liquidity and then go back down. Because the thing is, at all-time highs, we often have liquidity in a major resistance zone. We usually just bounce off there, and then it could drop again to around 4,100 or so. Grab a bit more money here, and then Ethereum can continue upward. And that's exactly what happened. Bounced off up here at the all-time high, corrected downward. Right now, we're exactly here in this zone at $4,200 to $4,300, exactly where there's a lot of liquidity. And yes, accordingly, I've already opened several positions here. This is the zone where I'm currently accumulating Ethereum because there's a lot of liquidity here. From here, I strongly tend to believe that we'll also see a breakout. That's why I've already placed positions here. And as I said, friends, take a look at the last videos. In the last videos, I've told you so many times where we would bounce, where we would correct, and how I would handle the whole thing. And that's exactly what we're doing. And that's why it's all the more important that you join the Telegram VIP group, because if you want to be able to do this too, if you want to learn, then that's the place. As I said, with Ethereum, I'm currently accumulating in this area. I'm leaning towards a bigger breakout here, and that we could even target $5,000 in the near future, that we could break through the $5,000 mark. And now let's talk about what we can expect from Ethereum in terms of price action, because some people here are really way too pessimistic. This is the Ethereum Bitcoin chart, meaning Ethereum's performance relative to Bitcoin. And here it has to be said, we've already broken through certain zones. Ethereum has performed significantly better in recent weeks, but of course the question is, where can it go from here? And I've marked certain zones here. I tend to think that we could break out here, correct downwards, and that this will be our bullish zone for Ethereum that will end up at around 0.053 in relation, because that's the low from 2022. And if we draw Fibonacci levels here from the top to the bottom, we have exactly the 50% Fibonacci right here. I think this zone is at least in play for Ethereum in this cycle. And now we have to see if Bitcoin continues to rise, how that will be reflected in the ratio. Now I'm looking at what does the situation look like for Bitcoin? Where do we stand with Bitcoin? And here we have 30 signals that trigger when we've seen the top in Bitcoin. So far, not a single signal has triggered. For some signals, we're at about 60%, for some others a bit less, and so on. So as you can see, we're still far from a bull market top for Bitcoin. I'm going to focus on the P-cycle top indicator now, because so far it's always been very accurate. Here we can clearly see that Bitcoin needs to reach at least $170,000 just to break through this purple line. And after that, it actually continued even further. That means you can already assume that Bitcoin will easily rise above $180,000 in this cycle. Only then, gradually, could Bitcoin start to become overheated. If Bitcoin stands at $180,000 and in relation Ethereum is at 0.053, as it should be at the very least, then mathematically Ethereum would have a price of $9,500. And $9,500 per Ethereum is easily possible, it's at least possible. I can even imagine that there's significantly more potential than that, because purely based on the Ellergrave analysis, we would have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And at the third point, we have our bullion price target. And our bullion price target in this cycle is at least $8,600. At least. But it could easily be worth $12,000, $13,000, or even $14,000. So overall, Ethereum is extremely bullish. So $8,000 is really the absolute minimum that Ethereum will experience in this cycle. But I also just wanted to show you this calculation, how you can relate it to Bitcoin. From this, we can already see, depending of course on how high Bitcoin will rise, but something like $9,000 per Ethereum is definitely possible in this cycle. Otherwise, I am extremely very optimistic about Ethereum because we simply have huge institutions there that are aggressively accumulating Ethereum. We see that they are now doing with Ethereum what they have done with Bitcoin over the past months and years. That's exactly what's happening now with Ethereum, ultra bullish. But you can also generally notice, especially in the altcoin sector, that we have a higher open interest nowadays than we did last year. We're seeing really nice inflows again in the altcoin sector. But most of that is clearly focused on Ethereum, XRP, and Cardano because as you can see, not much has really reached the other altcoins. Especially here, we're not doing that well yet when it comes to altcoin season, so we're not in altcoin season yet. Still, we've already surpassed the open interest from the last bull run in some cases. We're also still far from being in the greed phase, that still has to come, but it's already interesting to see that more and more attention is being paid to altcoins, especially of course with Ethereum leading the way. And here it's important to note that Ethereum already has significantly higher open interest today than it did in the last cycle. Today we already have twice as much open interest as at the bull run peak, and that's quite something. So here, more and more capital is also flowing into altcoins. Cardano is another example. Today, Cardano also has significantly more open interest than in 2021, when Cardano was at $3. And that's really pretty crazy. That's why, especially in this regard, you really have to think a bit about the altcoins. In my opinion, it makes sense that we're currently in this second phase where money is first being shifted into Ethereum, and from there it should then spread to the mid caps and then to the low caps. That's it for the altcoins for now, but today is also an important day because it's possible that peace will be made with Ukraine today, or not, depending on how things go. You should definitely pay attention to what happens here because Trump has big plans. Trump is currently putting a lot of pressure on to end the war. I think an end to the war would definitely be positive for the market in the coming hours. But if they don't reach an agreement today, that could actually have a short-term negative impact on the market. Otherwise, that's it for this video. Be sure to join our VIP trading group so you don't miss anything and always stay up to date. And with that, I'd say see you next time, friends. Ciao.